In the science of conflict, we often talk about an army as a shield or a sword, but Sun Tzu used a more visceral metaphor. An army is a fire. Wherever it settles, it breathes, it moves, and most importantly, it consumes. Understand the effects an army has on an area. Whether you are an invader or a protector, your mere presence acts as a massive economic vacuum. When thousands of soldiers settle into a region, they don't just occupy space, they occupy the local marketplace. They create a fire that can burn out the very community they are trying to defend. Why does this happen? It's basic math. An army's demand for fuel, food, and shelter instantly outstrips what any local town can provide. This creates a price spike. While a few opportunistic traders might get rich selling to the military, the average family is devastated. They find themselves spending their life savings just to buy basic bread. This is the ripple effect. It disrupts the moral law, the bond between the people and their leaders, because when people can't afford to eat, their obligations to the state, like taxes, become impossible to pay. The area is altered, often for years after the soldiers have marched away. As we look at the conflict in Ukraine in April 2026, we see this scorched economy playing out in real time across both sides of the line. Take the Allied burden in the rear. In rear hub cities like Dnipro or Vinnytsia, the presence of massive military logistics has turned local life upside down. By early 2026, Ukrainian inflation has accelerated to nearly 8%, with raw food prices surging by almost 10%. Even though these soldiers are defenders, their collective demand for services and goods has sent the cost of living soaring. The moral law is tested when the very people you are protecting find that they can no longer afford to live in their own neighborhoods. Take the economic void in the front line. In the Donbas and border regions, the fire has left a total void. As forces move through, local markets don't just fluctuate, they vanish. With infrastructure damage exceeding 195 billion by 2026 and millions pushed into poverty, the earth is fundamentally altered. Small businesses have been replaced by black markets, where traders charge exorbitant rates for basics like clean water and satellite data. This disruption is so profound that even after territory is liberated, the area remains a shell, requiring years of contributions from a distance just to rebuild the foundations of life. A wise commander knows that their army is a guest of the earth. If you allow your troops to cannibalize the local economy, you are burning the very ground you intend to hold. If the people start to see the army as a swarm of locusts rather than a force of order, your strategy will eventually fail from the inside out. Here is your war tip. When your forces move through an area, it will cause changes and problems within the local community. You must plan for price rises and disruption in every single place the army is stationed. Don't just plan for the battle, plan for the bakery. If you don't manage the ripple effect, you'll find yourself winning the war but losing the nation. An army that starves its own people to feed its soldiers is an army that's already burning out. We have just dissected the environmental reality of this lesson, understanding the ripple effects of an army. In the grand tempo calculation, we often focus on the movement of divisions, but Sun Tzu warns that the movement of the market is just as lethal. An army is a fire that consumes the very earth it stands upon. The core of this lesson is that the arrival of an army, even a liberating one, is a financial shockwave. In the theater of 2026, we see that the moral law of a nation is held together not just by ideology, but by the ability of a family to buy bread without emptying their life savings. The battlefields of Ukraine and the mobilized regions of Russia provide a haunting map of Sun Tzu's ripple effect. Take the Allied burden in the rear. Look at the cities in Ukraine's rear. As of April 2026, annual inflation has climbed to 7.9%, but that number hides the true fire. Food and non-alcoholic beverage prices rose by 1.3% in March alone. Even in areas far from the trenches, the Allied military presence and the logistical strain of war have caused the fuel prices to surge by over 13%. This is the cost of friendly fire economics, where common people spend their savings on overpriced essentials, because the army's demand has sucked up the supply dry. Take the domestic decay of the invader. On the other side of the line, the Russian exchequer is feeling the heat. By early 2026, the Kremlin has been forced to dedicate over 6% of its GDP to military spending, cannibalizing the civilian economy. This has triggered massive labor shortages in the peasantry, leading to stagnation and a draining of substance for ordinary households. The proximity of the war economy has caused widespread disruption that Sun Tzu warned would leave a nation stripped bare. Take the altered earth. In liberated territories, the fire has left a void. With infrastructure damage exceeding 195 billion, the area is altered for a certain period of time. Even after the army leaves, the high prices and the lack of resources mean the people remain impoverished, and the state must provide heavy exactions just to keep the lights on. Here is your final war tip for the 2026 landscape. A commander who ignores the marketplace will eventually lead an army of beggars. The army consumes before it protects. The price spikes before the first shot, and the disruption lasts longer than the occupation. In your own war room, ask yourself, is your presence building the community, or is it a fire that will leave nothing but ash for you to govern once the victory is won? Sun Tzu reminds us that high prices cause the people's substance to be drained away. As we watch the mechanized maneuvers on our screens, we must look past the tanks to the bakeries and the homes. The side that manages the ripple effect, protecting the savings and the moral law of the common people, is the only side that will have a nation worth leading when the smoke finally clears.